At my divorce hearing 25 years ago, my ex-wife Patricia laughed in my face and told the judge that I would never amount to anything in life, and that I would die poor and alone in some run-down nursing home with nobody to care about me or remember my name. Last week, Patricia opened the Wall Street Journal to find my obituary featured prominently in the Forbes Billionaire section, describing how tech mogul William Harrison had passed away peacefully at his estate, leaving behind a fortune worth $3.7 billion and a legacy of innovation that had changed the world. The only problem with Patricia's moment of shock and regret was that I wasn't actually dead, and the obituary was part of an elaborate plan I had been orchestrating for months to see how people who had written me off would react when they thought I had achieved everything they said I never could. I'm William Harrison. I'm 72 years old, and this is the story of how I went from being called a worthless failure by my ex-wife to becoming one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country, and how I used my fake death to expose the true character of everyone who had abandoned me when they thought I had nothing to offer them. Before we dive into this incredible tale of transformation, revenge, and the ultimate proof that success is the best form of vindication, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting us know what state you're tuning in from today. 25 years ago, I was sitting in a dingy divorce court in downtown Cleveland, watching my marriage of 18 years crumble as Patricia's attorney painted me as a failed dreamer who couldn't provide stability for his family, and who had wasted years chasing impossible business ventures that would never generate real income or success. Patricia had filed for divorce after discovering that I had invested our savings in what she called a ridiculous computer software project that would never make money, and she was demanding not only half of our remaining assets, but also significant alimony payments, based on her claim that I had damaged her financial security through my irresponsible business decisions. The truth was that Patricia had never believed in my vision for developing software that could revolutionize how businesses managed their data and communications, and she had spent years undermining my confidence and telling me that I was wasting time on projects that real successful people would never take seriously. During our marriage, Patricia had constantly compared me unfavorably to her friends' husbands who had traditional corporate jobs with steady paychecks and predictable career advancement, suggesting that my entrepreneurial ambitions were just elaborate ways of avoiding real work and real responsibility. Patricia's attorney presented evidence of my quote-unquote failed business ventures, including the 3 startups that had closed without generating significant revenue, and the various software projects that had not yet found commercial success, painting a picture of a man who was fundamentally incapable of achieving financial stability or professional success. When the judge asked Patricia to explain why she was seeking divorce and substantial financial support, she stood up and delivered a speech that I will never forget as long as I live, describing me as a perpetual failure who would never accomplish anything meaningful in life, and who would end up alone and forgotten. "Your Honor," Patricia said with contempt dripping from every word, "William has proven over 18 years of marriage that he is incapable of providing stability or security for his family, and I refuse to continue supporting his fantasy that he will someday become successful through these ridiculous computer projects that nobody wants or needs." Patricia continued her devastating testimony by explaining that she had wasted the best years of her life believing in my promises about future success and financial security, only to discover that I was just a dreamer who would never have the practical skills or the business sense needed to build a real career or accumulate real wealth. William will spend the rest of his life chasing impossible dreams and making excuses for why his projects don't work, Patricia declared to the court. And I predict that he will die poor and alone in some nursing home, with nothing to show for all his big talk about changing the world through technology. Patricia's prediction about my future was delivered with such certainty and such venom that it felt like a curse being placed on my life. And the way she laughed after making her statement suggested that she genuinely believed she was speaking an inevitable truth about my character and my destiny. The judge awarded Patricia a substantial settlement, including half of our assets and monthly alimony payments that would continue until she remarried or I died, effectively ensuring that my financial obligations to my ex-wife would follow me for the rest of my life, regardless of my future success or failure. Walking out of that courthouse with Patricia's laughter ringing in my ears and her prediction about my dying poor and alone burned into my memory, I made a decision that would define the next 25 years of my life and ultimately prove that she had catastrophically underestimated my potential and my determination. I decided that I would not only prove Patricia wrong about my ability to achieve success, but that I would become so successful that her cruel words would eventually come back to haunt her in ways she could never imagine, and that someday she would regret every moment of doubt and ridicule she had subjected me to during our marriage and divorce. The software project that Patricia had mocked as a worthless waste of time was actually an early version of what would eventually become the foundation for a revolutionary business management platform that could integrate data analysis, communication tools, and workflow automation in ways that had never been possible before. I had been working on this software for 3 years before our divorce, developing algorithms and user interfaces that could solve real problems for businesses that were struggling to manage increasingly complex operations and data requirements in the emerging digital economy. Patricia's complete lack of understanding about the potential value of software technology reflected her broader inability to recognize innovation and opportunity when they didn't fit traditional business models that she could easily understand and categorize. After the divorce, I moved into a small apartment and dedicated every waking hour to perfecting my software platform and finding ways to demonstrate its value to potential clients who could benefit from its capabilities and who had the vision to invest in emerging technologies. I lived on beans and rice for months at a time, reinvesting every dollar I could save into improving the software and marketing it to businesses that were early adopters of computer technology, and that understood the potential for software solutions to transform their operations and their profitability. The first major breakthrough came 18 months after my divorce, when a manufacturing company in Detroit agreed to test my software for managing their supply chain operations, and discovered that it could reduce their inventory costs by 30% while improving their delivery times and customer satisfaction ratings. The success with the Detroit manufacturer led to referrals and additional contracts with other companies that were looking for innovative solutions to complex business problems. And within 3 years, I had built a client base that was generating enough revenue to support a small team of programmers and business development specialists. By the 5th year after my divorce, my software company had grown to employ over 50 people and was generating annual revenues of $12 million, with major corporations across multiple industries licensing our platform for their critical business operations. Patricia's alimony payments, which had seemed like such a burden during the early years of my company's development, became an increasingly insignificant expense as my business grew and my personal wealth accumulated through stock ownership and profit distributions from the expanding enterprise. The irony of paying alimony to the woman who had predicted my failure while building a technology empire that she had mocked as worthless was not lost on me, and I began to view those monthly payments as a small price to pay for the motivation her cruelty had provided during my most challenging periods. As my company continued to grow and evolve, we expanded beyond our original business management software to develop comprehensive enterprise solutions that could handle everything from financial analysis and customer relationship management to supply chain optimization and human resources administration. The integrated nature of our software platform gave us significant competitive advantages over companies that offered only specialized solutions, and our ability to customize our systems for specific industry requirements made us extremely valuable to large corporations that needed sophisticated technological infrastructure. By the 10th year after my divorce, my company had gone public with an initial stock offering that valued the business at over $400 million, making my personal stake worth approximately $200 million, and establishing me as one of the most successful technology entrepreneurs in the Midwest. The financial press began featuring articles about our company's innovative approaches to enterprise software development, and about my personal story of building a technology empire from a small apartment with limited resources and unlimited determination to succeed despite personal setbacks and professional skepticism. Patricia's prediction that I would never amount to anything had been so thoroughly disproven by this point that I began to wonder if she was aware of my success, and whether she had any regrets about her cruel treatment of my ambitions and her complete misunderstanding of my potential for achievement. The success of my technology company attracted the attention of larger corporations that were interested in acquiring our platform and our expertise, leading to acquisition offers that reached into the billions of dollars as our software became increasingly essential to modern business operations across multiple industries. 15 years after my divorce, I sold my company to a multinational technology corporation for $2.8 billion, retaining a significant equity stake in the combined entity, and accepting a position as Chief Technology Officer that would allow me to continue developing innovative solutions while benefiting from the resources and market reach of a global enterprise. The sale of my company established me as one of the wealthiest technology entrepreneurs in the country and provided me with the financial resources to pursue other ventures and investments that would further increase my wealth and influence in the business community. Patricia's monthly alimony payments, which had once represented a significant portion of my limited income, now represented less than I spent on lunch at expensive restaurants, and I continued paying them not because I was legally required to do so, but because they served as a reminder of how far I had traveled from the failure she had predicted I would become. Over the following years, I diversified my investments into real estate, biotechnology, renewable energy, and other emerging industries, building a portfolio that generated hundreds of millions of dollars in additional wealth while also contributing to innovations that would benefit society and the global economy. My success had far exceeded even my own most optimistic projections from the early days after my divorce, when I had simply hoped to prove that Patricia was wrong about my potential, and to build a comfortable life for myself, despite her prediction that I would die poor and alone. The transformation from failed husband paying alimony to billionaire technology mogul was so dramatic and so complete that I began to consider ways to use my success to make a statement about the dangers of underestimating people and writing them off based on temporary circumstances or limited understanding of their capabilities and potential. 20 years after my divorce, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Patricia had remarried a successful attorney and was living a comfortable but not extraordinary life in an upscale suburb, apparently unaware of the extent of my wealth and success, because she had deliberately avoided learning anything about my life after our marriage ended. Patricia's deliberate ignorance about my achievements was both amusing and frustrating, because it meant that she had never experienced the regret or embarrassment that I had hoped she would feel when she realized how wrong she had been about my potential and how cruel she had been during our divorce proceedings. I began to develop a plan that would force Patricia to confront the reality of my success and to understand the magnitude of her mistake in underestimating me and predicting my failure with such confidence and cruelty during our divorce. The plan I developed was inspired by Mark Twain's famous observation that reports of his death had been greatly exaggerated, and it involved creating a fake obituary that would appear in major financial publications and would force Patricia and others who had doubted me to confront the reality of what I had accomplished despite their predictions and their lack of support. I worked with a team of publicists and media professionals to create a comprehensive obituary that would appear legitimate and would be picked up by major newspapers and financial magazines, describing my death from natural causes at my estate and celebrating my achievements as a technology pioneer and philanthropist. The obituary would include details about my wealth, my business accomplishments, my charitable contributions, and my impact on the technology industry, providing a complete picture of the success I had achieved since Patricia had predicted that I would die poor and alone with nothing to show for my life. The fake obituary was carefully crafted to include quotes from industry leaders, government officials, and academic experts who praised my contributions to technology and business, as well as details about the fortune I was leaving behind and the legacy of innovation that would continue through the companies and institutions I had built or supported. I arranged for the obituary to appear simultaneously in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, the Financial Times, and several other prestigious publications that Patricia and her social circle would be likely to read, ensuring that news of my supposed death and my extraordinary wealth would reach her quickly and dramatically. The timing of the fake obituary was planned to coincide with the 25th anniversary of our divorce, providing a symbolic completion of the journey from failure to success that had been motivated by her cruel predictions and her complete lack of faith in my potential for achievement. I also arranged for follow-up articles and tributes that would appear in the days following the initial obituary, providing additional details about my wealth and accomplishments, and ensuring that the story would have sufficient coverage to guarantee that Patricia would encounter multiple references to my success and my supposed death. The day my fake obituary appeared in the Wall Street Journal and Forbes magazine, I positioned myself where I could observe Patricia's reaction when she discovered the news about my death and my billion-dollar fortune, wanting to see firsthand how she would respond to learning that the man she had predicted would die poor and alone had actually become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. I had hired a private investigator to monitor Patricia's activities and to document her reaction when she learned about my supposed death and wealth, because I wanted to have a complete record of how she processed the information and whether she experienced any regret or embarrassment about her treatment of me during our marriage and divorce. The investigator was positioned near Patricia's home, and her usual haunts with cameras and recording equipment that could capture her immediate reaction and any conversations she might have with friends or family members about the shocking news of my transformation from failure to billionaire. According to the investigator's report, Patricia discovered my obituary while reading the Financial Times over breakfast at her favorite upscale cafe, and her initial reaction was complete shock and disbelief as she read the details about my wealth and my achievements in the technology industry. Patricia immediately called her sister and her best friend to share the stunning news that her ex-husband, whom she had dismissed as a hopeless failure, had actually become a billionaire technology mogul whose death was being covered by major financial publications around the world. The conversations that the investigator recorded revealed that Patricia was experiencing a complex mixture of shock, regret, embarrassment, and anger as she processed the reality that she had been completely wrong about my potential, and that she had divorced a man who would have made her incredibly wealthy if she had supported his ambitions instead of undermining them. Patricia's sister apparently reminded her of the cruel things she had said about me during the divorce proceedings, including her prediction that I would die poor and alone, and Patricia became defensive and angry when confronted with the evidence of how wrong she had been about my character and my potential for success. Over the following days, Patricia became increasingly obsessed with learning more details about my supposed wealth and accomplishments, reading every article and obituary she could find, and trying to understand how the man she had known as a struggling software developer had transformed into a technology titan worth billions of dollars. The investigators' reports described Patricia calling mutual friends and former colleagues to ask questions about my business success and whether they had known about my wealth, apparently trying to piece together a timeline of my transformation and to understand how she could have been so wrong about my potential. Patricia also began making inquiries about my estate and my will, apparently wondering whether she might have any claim to my supposed fortune through their former marriage or through legal challenges to my estate planning, revealing that her interest in my death was not primarily emotional, but was focused on potential financial opportunities. The investigator documented Patricia's visits to legal offices, where she consulted with attorneys about possible claims against my estate, demonstrating that her response to learning about my wealth was not grief or regret, but rather a calculated attempt to determine whether she could benefit financially from my supposed death. Patricia's mercenary response to news of my death and wealth confirmed everything I had suspected about her character and her motivations, and it provided perfect justification for the elaborate deception I had orchestrated to expose her true nature and her continued greed even decades after our divorce. After allowing Patricia and others to believe in my death for 2 weeks and documenting their various responses to the news of my supposed passing and my extraordinary wealth, I was ready to execute the final phase of my plan and reveal that reports of my death had been greatly exaggerated. I arranged for a follow-up article to appear in the same financial publications that had carried my obituary, this time featuring an interview with me in which I explained that my death had been erroneously reported and that I was very much alive and continuing to manage my business empire and my philanthropic activities. The article about my supposed resurrection included additional details about my wealth and my business accomplishments, as well as my explanation that the false obituary had been the result of a miscommunication with my publicist that had spiraled out of control before I could correct the misinformation. The story of my fake death and dramatic return to life generated significant media attention and became a sensation in the business press, with reporters and commentators fascinated by the unusual circumstances and the questions they raised about media accuracy and the public's fascination with wealthy entrepreneurs. I used the media attention surrounding my fake death to promote my latest philanthropic initiatives and to discuss my views on entrepreneurship, success, and the importance of perseverance in the face of skepticism and rejection from people who lack vision or understanding. The revelation that I was still alive after my widely reported death created an opportunity to reach out to Patricia directly and to confront her with the evidence of her mercenary response to news of my supposed passing and my extraordinary wealth. I arranged to meet Patricia at the same cafe where she had first discovered my obituary, wanting to see her reaction when she realized that the man she had predicted would die poor and alone was not only alive, but was also sitting across from her as one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. When Patricia arrived at the cafe for what she believed would be a meeting with a reporter who wanted to interview her about her former marriage to the recently deceased billionaire, she was shocked to discover that I was very much alive and was the person who had requested the meeting. Patricia's initial reaction was confusion and disbelief, as she struggled to understand how I could be sitting in front of her when she had read detailed obituaries describing my death and my funeral, followed by anger and embarrassment when she realized that she had been deceived. "William, what the hell is going on?" Patricia demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of shock and fury, as she processed the reality that her ex-husband was alive and had somehow orchestrated an elaborate hoax that had fooled major financial publications and thousands of readers. I calmly explained to Patricia that I had arranged for the false obituary to be published as a way of testing how people who had written me off would react when they learned about the success I had achieved despite their predictions and their lack of support during my early struggles. 25 years ago, you told a judge that I would never amount to anything and that I would die poor and alone, I reminded Patricia, watching her face as she remembered her cruel words and began to understand the purpose behind my elaborate deception. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to embarrassment as she recalled her testimony during our divorce proceedings and realized that my fake death had been designed specifically to confront her with the reality of how wrong she had been about my potential and my character. "I wanted to see how you would react when you thought I had achieved everything you said I never could," I continued. "And I have to say that your response was exactly what I expected from someone who predicted my failure with such confidence and cruelty." Patricia attempted to defend her actions during our divorce by claiming that she had been responding to legitimate concerns about financial stability and that she had never intended to be cruel or destructive. But her explanations rang hollow given the evidence of her recent attempts to make claims against my supposed estate. I presented Patricia with copies of the investigators' reports documenting her consultations with attorneys about potential claims against my estate and her inquiries about my will and my assets, proving that her interest in my supposed death had been primarily financial rather than emotional. "Even in death, you are still trying to find ways to benefit from my success," I pointed out, "which proves that you haven't changed at all since our divorce and that you're still the same person who valued money more than loyalty or love." Patricia's reaction to being confronted with evidence of her mercenary behavior was defensive anger rather than genuine remorse, as she claimed that she had been within her rights to explore legal options and that my deception had been cruel and unnecessary. "You want to talk about cruel?" I responded, pulling out a recording of her divorce testimony where she had predicted my failure and laughed about my prospects for dying poor and alone, Let's listen to what you said about me 25 years ago and see who was really being cruel. Playing Patricia's own words back to her after 25 years of extraordinary success created a moment of reckoning that forced her to confront the magnitude of her mistake and the cruelty of her predictions about my future. Patricia's face went pale as she listened to her younger self mocking my ambitions and predicting my failure with such confidence and venom, apparently hearing her own words for the first time since the divorce and recognizing how wrong and how cruel she had been. "I was angry and hurt during the divorce," Patricia said weakly. "I didn't really mean those things, and I certainly didn't expect you to hold on to them for 25 years and use them against me like this." I explained to Patricia that her words had not simply hurt my feelings, but had actually provided the motivation I needed to achieve success beyond my own expectations, turning her cruelty into fuel for the determination and perseverance that had carried me through the most difficult periods of building my business empire. "Your prediction that I would die poor and alone became my daily reminder of what I was working to prove wrong," I told Patricia. "And every time I faced setbacks or challenges, I thought about your laughter in that courtroom and used it to push myself harder toward success." Patricia's realization that her cruel words had actually contributed to my motivation and my ultimate success created an additional layer of irony and regret, as she understood that her attempt to diminish me had actually strengthened my resolve and helped drive me toward the extraordinary achievements she had said were impossible. The conversation with Patricia continued for over an hour as we discussed the trajectory of our lives since the divorce and the ways that her predictions about my failure had shaped my approach to business and success, with Patricia gradually acknowledging that she had been completely wrong about my potential and my character. Patricia admitted that she had followed traditional ideas about success and stability that had prevented her from recognizing the potential value of innovative thinking and entrepreneurial risk-taking, and that her fear of uncertainty had made her hostile toward the very qualities that had eventually made me successful. "I thought security meant having a husband with a regular paycheck and a predictable career," Patricia explained. "And I couldn't see past my own fear to understand that you were working on something that could be much more valuable than traditional employment." Patricia's acknowledgement of her limitations and her mistakes was satisfying but not surprising, because 25 years of extraordinary success had already provided me with all the validation I needed regarding my abilities and my potential for achievement. The real value of confronting Patricia with her predictions and her subsequent response to my fake death was not in receiving her apology or her acknowledgement of error, but in demonstrating to myself and to others the importance of perseverance in the face of skepticism and the dangers of allowing other people's limited vision to define your potential. Patricia's story became a cautionary tale that I shared with young entrepreneurs and business students about the importance of believing in your own vision, even when people close to you are unable to see the potential value of your ideas or your efforts. The fake obituary and Patricia's response to it also became a popular story in business circles and media coverage about my career, illustrating the personal motivations that can drive extraordinary achievement and the sweet satisfaction that comes from proving wrong those who doubt your potential. Over the years since my confrontation with Patricia, I have used my wealth and my platform to support other entrepreneurs who are facing skepticism and rejection, providing both financial resources and mentorship to help them persevere through the challenges that almost inevitably accompany innovative thinking and risk-taking. The Patricia Harrison Foundation, which I established using my ex-wife's maiden name as a subtle reminder of the motivation she provided, focuses on supporting entrepreneurs over 50 who are pursuing late career ventures and who face age discrimination and skepticism about their ability to achieve success in competitive industries. The Foundation's mission statement explicitly references the importance of not underestimating people based on their age, their background, or their previous setbacks, and it provides grants and support services to help mature entrepreneurs overcome the barriers and biases that might prevent them from achieving their potential. Patricia's initial reaction to learning about the foundation that bore her name was embarrassment and discomfort, particularly when she realized that her story was being used as an example of how not to treat people who are pursuing unconventional paths to success. I also established scholarship programs at several universities to support students who are developing innovative technology solutions and who demonstrate the kind of entrepreneurial thinking that Patricia had dismissed as impractical dreaming during our marriage. The scholarship recipients are required to study the stories of entrepreneurs who achieved success despite facing skepticism and rejection, including my own experience with Patricia's predictions and the motivation they provided during my most challenging periods. 25 years after Patricia predicted that I would die poor and alone, I am 72 years old, worth over $3 billion, surrounded by friends and colleagues who respect my achievements and my contributions to the technology industry, and actively engaged in philanthropic efforts that will benefit future generations of entrepreneurs and innovators. Patricia's prediction could not have been more wrong about any aspect of my future, and the success I achieved was motivated in large part by my determination to prove that her cruel assessment of my potential was based on ignorance and limited vision, rather than accurate insight into my character or capabilities. The elaborate fake death that I orchestrated to test Patricia's response to my success provided perfect closure to the relationship and confirmed that her values and her character had not improved over the decades since our divorce, validating my decision to pursue success independently rather than trying to maintain a relationship with someone who could not support my ambitions. Today, Patricia and I have no contact beyond the occasional awkward encounter at social events where we both happen to be present, and she has apparently learned to avoid making predictions about other people's potential for success after being so spectacularly wrong about mine. The story of my transformation from divorced failure to billionaire technology mogul has become part of my public identity and my legacy, demonstrating the power of persistence and vision in overcoming skepticism and achieving extraordinary success despite personal setbacks and professional challenges. Young entrepreneurs often ask me about the role that Patricia's cruel predictions played in motivating my success, and I always emphasize that while external skepticism can provide motivation, the most important factor in achieving extraordinary success is internal belief in your own vision and your willingness to persevere through inevitable setbacks and challenges. The fake obituary that revealed my supposed death and my actual wealth remains one of the most unusual and memorable publicity stunts in business history, and it continues to generate discussion about the psychology of success, the importance of perseverance, and the sweet satisfaction that comes from proving wrong those who doubt your potential. Patricia's story serves as a reminder that predicting other people's failure is a dangerous game that often says more about the predictor's limitations than about the subject's actual potential, and that the people who laugh at your dreams today might be reading about your success in tomorrow's headlines. The $3 billion I accumulated through building and selling my technology company represents not just financial success, but also the complete vindication of the vision and the determination that Patricia had mocked as unrealistic dreaming, proving that innovation and persistence can overcome skepticism and create extraordinary value. My philanthropic efforts and my continued involvement in the technology industry ensure that my legacy will extend far beyond the personal satisfaction of proving Patricia wrong, contributing to innovations and opportunities that will benefit society long after I am actually dead, rather than just pretending to be. The ultimate irony of Patricia's prediction that I would die poor and alone is that my fake death revealed how many people cared about my life and my contributions, with genuine expressions of grief and appreciation from colleagues, employees, customers, and community members who had been touched by my work and my generosity. When I do eventually die for real, it will be as someone who transformed skepticism into motivation, turned rejection into determination, and built a legacy of innovation and philanthropy that proves the power of believing in yourself even when others refuse to see your potential. Patricia's cruel laughter in that divorce courtroom 25 years ago became the soundtrack for my journey to extraordinary success, and every milestone I achieved was made sweeter by the memory of her certainty that I would never amount to anything in life. The fake obituary that announced my supposed death as a billionaire technology pioneer was my final answer to Patricia's prediction, proving once and for all that the woman who claimed to know me so well had actually understood nothing about my character, my potential, or my capacity for achieving extraordinary success against all odds. If this story of ultimate vindication and the sweet taste of proving the doubters wrong resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe for more incredible tales of triumph over adversity. Share your thoughts about this elaborate revenge in the comments below, and don't miss our next story by clicking the suggested video that will keep you on the edge of your seat.